We have been talking about the war in Israel, but what about the one in Europe? I hope you haven't forgotten about the Ukraine war. But that's exactly what Russian President Putin would want, for the focus to shift, to divert the West's support and attention away from Ukraine. Has the war in Israel become a deflection that suits Putin? The Hamas attacks on Israel came on Vladimir Putin's birthday, and they were nothing less than a gift for him. Hamas attacks on Israel will reduce the US focus on Ukraine. Russia is set to exploit the chaos. All eyes were on Israel and Palestine. Russia launched 36 attack drones against southern Ukraine overnight. The strikes targeted Odessa, Mykolaiv and Kherson. They destroyed infrastructure, but there were no casualties. And guess who had supplied those drones? Iran. Well, there's nothing new about it, but the assault in Israel gives it a new context. Iran openly backs Hamas. The Kremlin has been tight with Iran, and now it may try to get even closer. Ukrainian President Zelensky is not happy. Listen to what he said.
За наявною інформацією дуже чіткою, Росія зацікавлена в розпаленні війни на Близькому Сході.
Based on available information, it is in Russia's interest to inflame war in West Asia in order to create a new source of pain and suffering that would weaken global unity, create divisions, and help Russia in undermining freedom in Europe. We witness how Moscow's Iranian allies openly lend support to those who attacked Israel. All of this poses a much greater threat than the world currently perceives.
You see, Zelensky is playing up how the Kremlin is friends with Iran. He has cast his war against Russia and the struggle against Hamas in the same light. Has he sensed the threat that the West might lose focus on Kyiv? The prospect cannot be ignored. The US has already pledged more support for Israel. It has also started delivering munitions and military equipment to its ally. Seeing the situation on ground, the demand for weapons from Israel is only going to increase. And about Ukraine, you already know how long Zelensky's wish list runs. The US now faces competing requests from Israel and Ukraine. Is it prepared to fulfill all these demands? The Pentagon says it is. The National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said, and I quote, "We are a large enough, big enough, economically viable and vibrant enough country to be able to support both." Well, that's all well and good on paper, but we'll have to see how it actually plays out on ground, on the battleground. Meanwhile, Europe isn't so sure-footed. According to reports, many European officials fear that their governments are already tapped out from Ukraine. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said his government is poised to provide diplomatic intelligence or security support. That is, if Israel requests it. France, Germany and Italy have also promised support, but how much will they offer? Will it lead to frugality towards Ukraine? If yes, it will be to Russian President Putin's advantage. Russia began the biggest war in Europe in the last 75 years. Now, Hamas has followed suit in West Asia. This one is the worst in the last 50 years. And both wars can change the strategic landscape beyond recognition. We'll have to wait and watch. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's statement on the Israel-Hamas crisis is clear. The people of India stand by Israel. Prime Minister Modi expressed his support for Israel during a call with his counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu amid reports of Hamas rocket strikes on Israeli cities. Prime Minister Modi has expressed deep shock. He has pledged solidarity with Israel at this difficult time. Even though the violence in Israel has sharply divided people, with one camp slamming the terrorist attack and the other questioning Israel's actions in Palestine, India has expressed a clear message of support. New Delhi stands with Israel. This is significant, and tonight I will tell you how and why. First and foremost, let's make this clear. India's support for Israel is based on its stance against terrorism. India strongly and unequivocally condemns terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. These words highlight the firm stance of the Indian government. It's a stance that Prime Minister Modi reiterated after his call with Netanyahu. During this call, Prime Minister Modi received a comprehensive briefing on the ongoing situation. Now remember, India places anti-terrorism at the forefront of the global agenda. In fact, India has been advocating for counter-terrorism efforts in various forums. This includes the Quad, the SCO, BRICS, and many others. The gravity of Hamas's attack on Israel cannot be ignored. It's a threat that extends far beyond regional borders, and it's a threat that India recognizes as a menace to peace and security. But remember, condemning terrorism and the attack on Israel is also of utmost importance for India's own national security interests. India understands that addressing terrorism on a global scale is not just a responsibility, it's a necessity. New Delhi's reaction isn't merely symbolic, it reflects the strategic and military ties between Israel and India. These two countries are not just allies, they are partners in important endeavors. They stand alongside the US and the UAE in the I2U2 infrastructure. It underlines their commitment to the region's stability and security. Also remember, defense is a cornerstone of the India-Israel bilateral relationship. In fact, India holds a distinguished position of being the largest single customer for Israeli weapon systems. Once ties were upgraded in 1992, the trajectory of defense and trade ties between the two sides took off at a breakneck pace. Israel rapidly rose to become India's second largest defense partner. Israel is among India's most reliable weapons suppliers, a supplier that puts no political preconditions. This was evident during the 1999 Kargil War. At the time, Israel supplied weapons and surveillance systems and upgraded existing military hardware during the war. After Prime Minister Modi's election in 2014, ties improved dramatically. In 2017, Prime Minister Modi became the first Indian Prime Minister ever to visit Israel. This marked a major milestone, underlining the importance of this partnership. Today, the relationship spans from tourism, agriculture to defense. According to India's Ministry of External Affairs, this is a strong high-tech partnership aligning with the aspirations of the two knowledge economies. But it's not just about trade and defense. Political ties are also friendly. Let's not forget, India has traditionally supported the Palestinian cause too. While Prime Minister Modi made a historic visit to Israel, he also achieved a de-hyphenation of ties. In 2018, he separately visited Palestine, underscoring India's commitment to a balanced approach. India even hosted the Palestinian President, Mahmoud Abbas, in New Delhi during the same year. The Indian Prime Minister has skillfully balanced India's ties with Israel and Palestine. India consistently has voiced its support for a negotiated solution for lasting peace between the two. It has endorsed this even at the United Nations. You see, the deep divisions within Palestine have also become more apparent, with the Palestine Authority in Ramallah and the Hamas in Gaza. So support for the Palestinian cause must not be confused with Hamas's terror. While India continues to support the Palestinian cause, it has also strengthened its strategic ties with Israel. India has experienced firsthand the devastating impacts of attacks by terrorist groups, so it understands Israel's security concerns. At the end of the day, India has consistently advocated for peace. It envisions a West Asia characterized by sustainable, long-lasting peace. This vision isn't merely a dream, it's a reflection of India's commitment to global stability and its willingness to play a constructive role in achieving that. As we move on, I have a horrifying clip for you. It was released by Hamas. You have to see it for yourself.
From this moment, we announce that for every attack towards our people who are safe in their homes, without previous warning, unfortunately, we will have to execute one of the civilian enemy captives that we have hostage. And we will be forced to broadcast this in video and audio. We announce this decision and we hold the responsibility in front of the whole world to the Zionist enemy and its leadership. They are responsible for this decision.
This is how ugly the situation has become. For every attack, one civilian hostage will be killed. That is what Hamas has threatened. What looked very unlikely till yesterday has now become the reality of today. Hamas has threatened to kill hostages. It is treating them like pawns, like insurance against attacks. For every attack from Israel, it says it will kill a hostage and broadcast it. Yes, it will broadcast it with video and audio. Let me remind you, at least 150 Israelis have been taken hostage by Hamas. And it's not just the Israelis. People of 6 to 8 other nationalities have also been kidnapped. This includes 2 Mexicans, 3 Brazilians, at least 1 student from Nepal and at least 1 British national. Reports say German citizens have also been kidnapped along with at least 11 Thai nationals. There are also reports of French and Canadian hostages. You see, Israel is currently in an unprecedented hostage crisis. And what is Prime Minister Netanyahu going to do about it? The mood on ground is of anger. There is a rising demand for justice and revenge. Netanyahu has threatened Hamas that Israel is just getting started. He has called up 300,000 reservists and counting. This has happened before, but never in a span of just 2 days. Everything is pointing at a ground offensive. But given the hostage crisis, can Israel afford to do that? A ground offensive is risky. Hundreds of hostages are spread across just 25 miles of land in Palestine. Wherever an airstrike will land, it is likely to hit an innocent civilian. But then again, civilians have become just collateral damage in this war. There are no barriers on butchering innocent lives from both sides. Meanwhile, Qatar is in talks with Hamas for a prisoner swap. The mediators are negotiating freedom of Israeli women and children. In exchange, they are offering to release 36 Palestinian women and children from both Israeli prisons. So, will Netanyahu consider doing the same? Will it cut a deal with Hamas to rescue its hostages? We at this point will just pray for their safe return. Now, for more analysis, we are now being joined by Jonah Blank, who is a senior political scientist at RAND from Washington, D.C. He is also the former foreign policy advisor to President Joe Biden. Jonah, welcome to WION.
Thank you for having me.
I want your assessment of this ongoing war. What happened? How did no one see this coming? How did no one see Hamas coming?
Well, that is a question that no one has answered satisfactorily yet. Former top generals in the Israeli military and former top officials of the Israeli intelligence services have been warning for months that the ongoing political crisis in Israel, before any of the war in Gaza, was weakening Israel's defensive posture. We don't know yet whether that was directly responsible for this clear intelligence failure, but I don't think anyone can say that that Israel has in any way prepared for an attack that was very, very coordinated and very, very sophisticated and tremendously tragic and absolutely inexcusable.
Now let's talk about the hostage crisis, unprecedented hostage crisis for Israel. Negotiations are on to release Israeli hostages, as we are given to understand, but a big threat, an ominous threat rather, coming from Hamas, which is terrifying. When will these hostages return safely, in your assessment?
Well, we all hope that they will return safely as soon as possible, but let's not undersell the real threat that we see right here. Hamas, as we've seen in the past few days and in the decade and a half earlier, we've seen that Hamas is very willing to engage in horrific acts to achieve what it considers to be its aims. Now, its aims have never really succeeded in advancing the cause of safety and peace for the Palestinian people, let alone the people of Gaza. Will they actually start executing hostages? They may, and Israel is very aware of it and has dealt with this before. But let's be aware, we've seen horrific bloodshed on both sides, and we're going to see a lot more on both sides before this is over.
Right, Jonah, I'm just going to repeat your statement. You're saying that Hamas at this point is very willing to commit to these horrific acts. I think another obvious question that everybody is asking is, who funds Hamas? Where is it getting its weaponry from?
Well, we know that Hamas has historically been supported by Iran, in addition to other outside players, but most noteworthy Iran. We've heard a lot of reporting about Iran's support for this particular action. As far as I know, we don't have actual proof of it yet, but it would be naive to think that Iran was not involved in the planning or at least provision of material support for it.
Right. My final question, Jonah, do you see any immediate hope of a ceasefire?
Sadly, I don't. In my view, Israel has very little option other than to take on Hamas and to respond militarily. And as we've seen before in so many places in so many countries, a committed terrorist group holding hostages is a nightmare situation.
Right, Jonah, thank you so much for all your analysis. Thanks for joining us on Gravitas tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Is Israel using white phosphorus in the Gaza Strip? Because a video has emerged. It apparently shows the alleged use of this incendiary weapon, a banned weapon in the densely populated Gaza. Before we proceed further, let's be clear, we cannot confirm the authenticity of these videos from the battleground. And so it is not known if the video was indeed shot in Gaza and if it was in fact a recent video. But why is this a big cause of concern? What are incendiary weapons? Why are they banned? What is white phosphorus? It is a waxy yellowish chemical with a pungent odor. It is a highly combustible chemical that burns quickly and brightly when exposed to air. It is used in incendiary weapons by militaries around the world for a variety of reasons, such as illuminating targets at night or to just inflict heavy damage. It is also very difficult to put out. You see, it clings to surfaces including skin and clothes, and so it is extremely dangerous. It can cause severe burns, even down to the bone. Now, if that's not shocking enough, those who come into contact with white phosphorus also suffer from respiratory damage, infection, and organ failure. These dangers make dropping them on civilian areas a war crime. So what are international rules? The use of white phosphorus in conflicts raises serious ethical as well as legal concerns. Now, while white phosphorus itself might not be officially classified as a chemical weapon, its fiery, incendiary nature has prompted the world to take action. It is subject to regulations outlined in Protocol 3 to the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. This protocol, signed in Geneva in 1980 and enforced since 1983, lays down the law. It puts limits on the use of incendiary weapons, and that includes those containing white phosphorus. The protocol has 115 state parties, including countries such as France, the US, Russia, and Ukraine. The goal? To minimize the suffering caused by these lethal weapons. This protocol prohibits using them on civilians. Not just that, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, in effect since 2002, also provides a definition of war crimes. It prohibits actions such as the destruction of property not justified by military necessity and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population or civilian objects. Thus, violations of this protocol may constitute war crimes if proven.